Beneath the roar of the medieval tournament crowd, a secret world lay hidden in stone. This is the story of the labyrinth under the tournament grounds, a blueprint only kings could read. We will uncover how this architectural marvel was born from royal paranoia and protected by impossible geometry and psychological traps. By the end, you will understand the true price of absolute power and the brilliant minds who built a kingdom's deepest secret. What drove a king to bury his greatest defense under a public spectacle, and how did a simple song of stone become more powerful than any army? What does it truly take to guard a secret that could shatter a throne? A king's fear is a powerful engine for creation. In the weeks following the attempt on his life, King Alaric saw enemies in every shadow. The very tournaments meant to showcase his strength and entertain his people had become a glaring vulnerability, a crowded stage where any face in the crowd could hide a dagger. His command was not born of ambition but of pure, chilling necessity. He summoned one man, a master architect whose name has been lost to time, and laid out his terrifying vision. A hidden world was to be built directly under the bustling tournament grounds, a secret sanctuary and a trap for any who might try to repeat the attack. This was not a palace of gold and marble for all to admire. It was a fortress of shadows, its existence a secret more valuable than any crown jewel. The architect toiled for years, directing a workforce of laborers who were sworn to secrecy and then sent far from the kingdom upon the project's end. When the final stone was laid, the king ensured the ultimate security measure. The architect himself vanished from all royal records, his identity erased as if he had never been. The only map, the sole blueprint for this subterranean world, was never committed to parchment. Instead, it was memorized, a complex mental chart passed in a hushed ceremony from the dying king to his chosen heir. This oral tradition meant that at any given time, only one living person on Earth knew the labyrinth's true layout. This was the genesis of a secret so profound it became a pillar of the kingdom itself, a direct result of one man's paranoia made manifest in stone. To comprehend the maze's clever cruelty, we must first understand the mind that willed it into being. That small stone dais was the heart of the deception. While crowds cheered and knights clashed on the field, the labyrinth's true gateway stood in full view, a stage for royal criers and ceremonial announcements. Its ordinary public function was its greatest disguise. The secret lay not in a hidden lever, but in a precise dance of touch upon the stone itself. Specific carvings, which appeared to be nothing more than decorative flourishes worn smooth by time, were actually a sophisticated locking mechanism. Applying the correct sequence of pressure to these carvings was like whispering a password to the stone. One wrong step, one carving pressed out of order or with too much force, and internal counterweights would shift, jamming the entire entrance shut, possibly forever. This was not a door for forced entry. It was a door that responded only to a secret handshake. When the sequence was performed perfectly, a nearly invisible seam would appear in the turf-covered ground beside the dais. A massive, grass-topped section of earth would pivot inward without a sound, revealing a steep and narrow staircase that seemed to swallow the daylight whole. The transition was instantaneous from the bright, noisy world of the tournament to a chilling, silent descent. This first lesson in misdirection was a promise of the psychological warfare to come, a warning that within this king's domain, nothing would ever be as simple as it seemed. Beyond the hidden door lay a geometry of pure deception. The corridors of the labyrinth rejected the rules of the world above. built upon a maddening architecture where the angles of a room might not add up to the expected 180 degrees, and two hallways that seemed perfectly parallel could, after a series of turns, suddenly meet in a silent, impossible junction. This was the second architectural principle, a physical manifestation of non-Euclidean geometry designed to shatter an intruder's fundamental sense of reality. A person trying to mark their path with a string or by always turning left would soon find their own logic turned against them. The floors held a barely perceptible incline, and the walls curved in ways the human eye could not easily detect, warping perception over distance until a traveler felt they were walking in a dream. The very sound of their own panicked breath was swallowed by the uniform, porous stone of the walls, creating a suffocating silence that amplified the growing dread. This was not merely a maze, it was a psychological weapon meticulously crafted to dismantle a person's confidence and will. How then could anyone possibly navigate such a place? The blueprint held by the king was not a simple drawing with lines and labels. It was a complex set of sensory instructions. It detailed the exact number of paces to take along a corridor that felt slightly shorter than it was. It described the subtle, almost imperceptible differences in texture on certain walls, a rough patch here, a smooth seam there, which served as the true signposts. In a few key locations, narrow shafts, hidden from the main passages, allowed slivers of moonlight or specific starlight to pierce the darkness at precise times of the night, offering celestial confirmation of one's position. The labyrinth was a lock, and the blueprint was the sequence of turns, touches, and timed movements needed to open it. This architectural trickery ensured that knowledge alone was not enough. One needed the king's specific, memorized guidance to survive the journey inward. But the labyrinth's architects knew that disorienting the eyes was only the first step. They next targeted the ears, weaponizing silence and sound with terrifying precision. Within the stone maze existed specialized chambers known as whispering galleries. If a royal guard knew the exact spot to stand, he could murmur a message and his words would travel, clear and distinct, along a single, invisible sound path to a listening post far across the labyrinth. This allowed for silent, instantaneous communication across impossible distances, a secret network of sound that bypassed the confusing corridors entirely. For those who knew the blueprint, the walls themselves became allies, carrying vital intelligence through the dark. For an intruder, however, the labyrinth presented a very different acoustic reality. Dead-end passages were often acoustic traps, their walls subtly curved and lined with a rare, resonant quartz mixed into the mortar. In these chambers, the softest footstep would echo and multiply, blending with the sound of panicked breathing to create a disorienting cacophony. A single whisper could become a chorus of ghostly voices, seeming to come from every direction at once. This was no accident. It was a deliberate sonic assault designed to amplify an intruder's fear and scramble their sense of direction. The stonemasons who built these features possessed a guild secret, an understanding of how to shape stone to manipulate sound itself. Their knowledge was so valuable and so dangerous that they were sworn to lifelong secrecy, their craft dying with them. This layer of defense meant that even if someone managed to navigate the visual trickery, they would be betrayed by the very sounds they made, their own presence turned into a weapon against them. The interplay of sound and stone created a deeply unsettling dimension to the labyrinth's security, proving its designers understood that the most potent traps are those that prey upon the human mind. This reliance on memory over parchment was the ultimate safeguard. A stolen map could be copied and spread, but a song locked inside a king's mind was a secret that could not be forcibly taken. The labyrinth's entire layout was therefore transformed into an epic poem, a lyrical sequence of verses known only as the Song of Stone. This was no simple list of directions. It was a rich tapestry of allegory, where each stanza wove a piece of the path into a narrative of mythical beasts and legendary quests. A line about a silver knight vanquishing a shadow beast might encode the precise number of paces to walk down a dimly lit corridor. The instruction to follow the path where the twin serpents sleep, their tails entwined, could reveal the correct one of two identical-looking passages. To navigate, the king had to walk and recite, interpreting the poetic imagery in real time, matching the verses to the subtle, almost invisible features of the stone around him. This process did more than just guide his steps. It bound the ruler to his hidden fortress in an intimate ritual of power. The act of remembering and reciting became a reaffirmation of his right to rule, a test of intellect and will that ensured only the most capable mind could access the kingdom's deepest secret. This mnemonic system turned a technical blueprint into a living part of the monarchy itself, a secret that breathed with the rhythm of the king's own voice and lived only within the royal line of succession. Yet for all its psychological cunning, the labyrinth possessed a third and perhaps most formidable layer of defense, one governed not by stone or sound, but by the relentless flow of time itself. Deep within the earth, the architects had tapped into a powerful underground river, diverting its force to power a series of hydraulic time locks. Entire sections of the maze, including the most secure inner chambers, were designed to flood at precise and predetermined intervals. This was not a simple, constant hazard. It was a temporal puzzle where passageways would only become safe to traverse during specific, fleeting windows. The system was regulated by intricate water clocks, their mechanisms hidden deep within the foundations, and their schedules were intricately linked to celestial events. The king's mental blueprint included verses that referenced the moon's phase or the ascent of a certain star, poetic cues that translated into the exact times when massive sluice gates would open or close, draining a corridor for 1 hour before it was sealed again by the rising water. An intruder, no matter how clever, who lacked this temporal knowledge would face a terrifyingly simple trap. They could round a corner into a perfectly dry hall, only to hear the distant groan of stone and the first gush of water as the time lock engaged, flooding the passage behind them and blocking the way forward, leaving them with nowhere to go. This hydraulic genius served a brilliant dual purpose. Beyond its role as a defensive mechanism, the diverted river provided a secret, uncontaminated water source for the castle during a prolonged siege, flowing through hidden channels to a secure reservoir. It also powered concealed water mills that could grind grain for bread, turning the labyrinth into a practical survival tool that ensured the kingdom's heart could endure even when its walls were under attack. The mastery of water within the stone reveals an engineering prowess that was centuries ahead of its time, transforming a defensive maze into a self-sustaining fortress, all hidden in plain sight beneath the spectacle of the tournament. But the king's memory alone could not maintain the stone beast beneath his feet. For the labyrinth to remain a ready sanctuary, it required a caretaker, a figure known only as the Silent Guardian. This was the sole individual beyond the monarch permitted to walk the deceptive halls. Chosen for a lifetime of service, the guardian was almost always a mute or someone who had sworn a sacred and unbreakable vow of silence. Their inability to speak was their greatest qualification, rendering them immune to bribes, threats, or the simple human failing of a loose tongue. Their loyalty was absolute, their discretion woven into their very being. The Guardian did not carry the entire Song of Stone in their mind. That burden belonged to the king alone. Instead, they were taught a simplified, functional map, a set of essential routes needed to perform their vital duties. Communication between the king and his silent servant was conducted through a complex and utterly unique sign language, a dialect of gestures known only to the two of them. With these silent signals, the monarch could issue commands and the guardian could report on the labyrinth's condition. Their responsibilities were vast and critical. They would meticulously inspect the mechanical and acoustic traps, ensuring they were primed and functional. They monitored the complex hydraulic time locks, clearing any debris from the sluice gates to prevent catastrophic failure. In designated, secure chambers, they would leave pre-arranged supplies, fresh food, water, and lamp oil, ensuring the king would find the labyrinth fully provisioned should he ever need to use it. The guardian was a ghost in the machine, a human element that gave the stone walls a watchful presence. Their very existence was a state secret on par with the labyrinth itself, a living, breathing component of the kingdom's ultimate defense. This role transformed the architectural wonder from a static monument into an operational fortress, perpetually maintained and waiting in the deep, silent dark for the day it might be called upon to save a kingdom. The true power of the labyrinth was not just its existence, but its use in a moment of crisis. During the Peasant Revolt of 1242, the theoretical defenses became brutally practical. As thousands of enraged rebels overran the tournament grounds and the castle's outer walls, King Edric II faced total capture. The public spectacle above became a killing field, but beneath the chaos, the king and his most trusted knights performed the silent ritual of entry. They vanished from the mob site, descending into the stone. This was not a retreat into a passive shelter. It was a transition to a hidden command center. From the depths, using the whispering galleries, the king's quiet orders traveled through the walls to his loyalist commanders holding the inner keep. He could hear their reports and direct their defenses with an impossible clarity, as if he were standing among them, but the masterstroke was yet to come. While the rebels celebrated their apparent victory, believing the king trapped, a contingent of his finest knights followed the Song of Stone through a long, forgotten tunnel that exited deep within a forest a mile behind the rebel lines. Their sudden, silent emergence from the earth was a shock that shattered the revolt's morale. Attacked from an impossible direction, the rebel army broke into chaos, convinced the king commanded supernatural forces. The official story, carefully crafted afterward, spoke of divine intervention, of angels striking down the unfaithful. This legend, born from the labyrinth's secret geometry, wrapped the monarchy in an aura of mystical authority for generations. The labyrinth had done more than save a king. It had transformed a desperate escape into a legendary counter-offensive, proving itself as the ultimate instrument of active rulership. A secret this powerful, however, could not hope to remain eternal. The labyrinth's deepest secret was its ability to change shape. Beyond the disorienting angles and the weaponized silence lay a fourth architectural principle, a system of shifting masonry and counterweight halls that transformed the maze from a static puzzle into a living trap. Entire walls, perfectly seamless and indistinguishable from their fixed neighbors, were engineered to pivot on silent, oiled stone hinges when triggered. Sections of floor could tilt with a low rumble, becoming steep ramps that redirected a fleeing intruder back toward a dead end or a guarded chamber. The entire layout was dynamic, a mechanical chessboard where the king held all the pieces. The genius of this system lay in its triggers, which were masterfully disguised as mundane, even broken, features of the environment. A single loose stone in an otherwise solid wall, which an intruder might instinctively push against, could be the very lever that sealed the passage behind them. A particular iron torch sconce, appearing to be merely rusted in place, might need a quarter turn to disengage a lock. The blueprint's poetic verses were essential here, encoding the precise actions needed to navigate this mechanical heart. A line like the beggar's cup runneth over was not a metaphor. It was a literal instruction for the king to locate a hidden, carved depression in the floor, resembling a bowl, and pour water into it from a small, concealed cistern nearby. The added weight of the water would trip a delicate counterbalance, causing a distant section of wall to swing open, revealing a route that did not exist moments before. This constant, hidden maintenance fell to the Silent Guardian, whose duties included ensuring these massive stone mechanisms remained perfectly balanced and free of grit, their complex pulleys and stone weights ready to move at a touch. For a king fleeing for his life, this adaptability was his ultimate advantage. He could lead pursuers down a familiar corridor only to trigger a shift that turned it into a prison, or open a new path through solid rock to make his escape. This is why no forced entry could ever truly conquer the labyrinth. Any map, even one painstakingly drawn from a previous journey, would be rendered useless the moment the stones decided to dance. The very ground a person stood on was an illusion, waiting for a whispered command to rearrange reality itself. Even the very air within the labyrinth could be a weapon. Royal alchemists sworn to the crown contributed a terrifying biological layer to the stone defenses, cultivating a unique species of phosphorescent fungi. These growths lined the ceilings of specific corridors, casting a faint, otherworldly greenish-blue glow. For the king, this eerie light was a guide, illuminating his path without the need for a torch that could betray his position. But this natural lantern was also a sophisticated trap. The fungus was incredibly delicate. To anyone not following the blueprint's explicit instructions, the slightest disturbance, a brush of a shoulder or a gust of breath, would cause the fungi to release a cloud of nearly invisible spores. These spores were a mild hallucinogen carefully refined by the alchemists. An intruder would not collapse, but their mind would begin to turn against them. Shadows would seem to writhe on the walls, distant whispers would echo in the silent halls, and a deep, irrational paranoia would set in, making them distrust their own senses and companions. This was an attack on perception itself, amplifying the labyrinth's existing psychological warfare. In other sections of the maze, the alchemists turned the very geology of the place against any interloper. Natural fissures in the bedrock released cold, damp air, creating a uniformly chilling atmosphere. Yet in a few select chambers, these alchemists had performed a deadly kind of surgery on the stone itself. Using their knowledge of underground currents, they drilled narrow boreholes to tap into pockets of naturally occurring poisonous vapors, heavy gases that seeped from deep within the earth. They then carefully redirected this invisible death through hidden channels in the walls, releasing it into predetermined rooms. One chamber might be safe, merely cold, while the next, identical in appearance, would slowly fill with an odorless, toxic mist. The King's Song of Stone contained vital verses for this environmental gauntlet. It specified the safe breathing zones, often marked by a subtle, different texture on the wall at a specific height. It detailed the exact, non-intrusive way to pass through the fungal halls, perhaps by walking precisely in the center of the corridor and holding one's breath for a count of 10 paces. This integration of alchemy and biology created a defense that was both invisible and insidious. An intruder could have the perfect map, avoid every mechanical trap, and solve every acoustic puzzle, only to be undone by a breath of air or a spore they never saw coming. It asked a harrowing question: how do you fight an enemy you cannot see, in an environment where the walls, the light, and even the air you breathe are all part of the trap? These heraldic carvings were far more than stone decoration. They formed a living library of the kingdom's past, a visual chronicle that only the king could truly decipher. Every shield, every mythical beast etched into the wall held a dual purpose. To a lost intruder, they were meaningless historical artifacts, but to the monarch reciting his song of stone, they were as clear as signposts on a royal road. A specific stanza might reference the lion of the first king, but the crucial detail was the direction of the lion's gaze. If the verse said the lion watches the setting sun, the king would know to take the corridor that lay in the direction the stone beast was looking. The number of feathers on a carved griffin's wing could indicate the exact number of paces to walk before the next turn. Even the subtle coloring of inlaid stones in a tapestry mattered, a dragon with a ruby eye signaling a safe path, while one with a jet eye warning of a dead end or a trap ahead. This system required the king to be both a navigator and a historian, intimately familiar with the symbols of his own lineage. The labyrinth itself became a test of royal legitimacy. An impostor might force the song of stone from a captive king, but without the deep, ingrained understanding of what each heraldic element truly represented, the words would be meaningless. He might know the verse about the twin serpents, but if he could not identify the correct shield out of a dozen nearly identical ones, he would be lost. This brilliant design meant that the maze was not just physically impenetrable, but intellectually locked to anyone outside the royal bloodline. The very history of the kingdom, carved in stone, became the final and most personal key to navigating its deepest secret. Yet even the whispering galleries and shifting walls paled before the labyrinth's most feared internal guardian, a chamber known only as the Oblivion of Echoes. This was not a prison in the traditional sense, but a perfectly spherical room carved from a single, seamless piece of stone. Its only entrance was a small opening high on the curved wall, a hole that would seal with a muffled thud of sliding rock the moment someone dropped inside. The true horror of the oubliette was not its inaccessibility, but its acoustics. The smooth, parabolic curvature of the walls was engineered to a maddening precision. Any sound, from a whimper to a shout, would be caught and reflected, bouncing endlessly across the surface. A single spoken word would rapidly multiply, overlapping with its own echoes until it built into a deafening, continuous roar, a cacophony of a person's own making. This was sensory torture, a psychological assault designed to overwhelm the mind and shatter any sense of self. An intruder trapped within would be consumed by the noise of their own panic, unable to hear their own thoughts, left in a disorienting void of their own amplified terror. The chamber was not meant for long-term confinement, but for immediate and total incapacitation. Escape seemed impossible, a nightmare of smooth, unclimbable stone and unbearable noise. Yet the king's blueprint held the key, concealed within a poetic verse. The solution was described as silencing the storm within. This cryptic line instructed the king, or anyone who knew the secret, to find a specific, nearly invisible pressure plate on the floor. Stepping onto this plate required a tremendous act of will to move deliberately while engulfed in that roaring chaos. When activated, the plate did not trigger a loud mechanism. Instead, it engaged a series of felt-lined dampeners that slid silently from within the walls, instantly absorbing the sound and returning the sphere to an unnerving, absolute silence. The entrance would then unseal. This chamber was the labyrinth's ultimate argument against intrusion, a space where the very environment became an active warden. Its terrifying reputation seeped into the royal court as a ghost story, a whispered tale of a room that could drive a person mad with their own voice, ensuring that even the most ambitious courtier thought twice about probing the kingdom's deepest secrets. This architectural marvel served a final, brilliant purpose beyond defense and survival. It became a stage for statecraft. When a rival noble of significant power and questionable loyalty arrived at court, the king possessed a unique tool for negotiation, one far more potent than any display of military might. He would orchestrate a seemingly casual stroll through the tournament grounds, his guest at his side. At a chosen moment, the king would perform the secret sequence of touches upon the stone dais, the hidden door groaning open as if by magic. He would then invite his stunned companion for a brief tour, a walk through only the labyrinth's outer and least treacherous rings. This was no act of hospitality. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The noble would experience firsthand the disorienting angles, the unnerving silence that swallowed their footsteps, and the chilling sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. They would witness a wall pivot smoothly at the king's touch, revealing a passage where none existed before. In that controlled, confusing environment, the message was delivered with devastating clarity. The king commanded forces and secrets the visitor could not even begin to comprehend. His power was not just in his armies or his wealth, but in the very earth beneath their feet. This demonstration of absolute control over a space designed to baffle and intimidate was often enough to secure a favorable treaty or a pledge of allegiance without a single threat being uttered. The labyrinth, in these moments, transformed from a hidden fortress into a theater of power, its bewildering corridors silently arguing for the king's unchallengeable authority, proving that the most effective victories are sometimes won not on the battlefield, but in the mind. The labyrinth's existence was never meant for the history books, so how can we be sure it was ever truly there? The answer lies not in grand royal decrees, but in the quiet, coded whispers of monks and librarians. In scattered monastic chronicles and the private diaries of court archivists, we find fleeting glimpses of the secret, always cloaked in allegory. These texts never speak of a labyrinth. Instead, they refer to the king's private garden beneath the field, or rite of the silent ways of stone. One remarkable entry from a court scribe tells of a jester who, after a particularly raucous joust, vanished into the earth before the crowd's very eyes. The chronicle claims he reappeared moments later, holding a rare, bioluminescent flower that was known to bloom only in the deepest, most lightless caves. How else could he have obtained such a thing, if not from a hidden world below? Another fragment from the ledger of a royal astronomer is even more telling. It records his generous salary, paid not for observing the stars, but for the peculiar task of charting the sun's path through the king's own foundation stones. This was not madness. It was a precise, scientific endeavor to map the narrow light shafts that pierced the labyrinth, using celestial bodies to verify the timing of its hydraulic locks and safe passageways. These aren't just fanciful stories. When historians cross-reference these cryptic accounts with modern ground-penetrating radar surveys of ancient tournament sites, a compelling picture emerges. The scans reveal vast, unnatural voids and complex geometric structures deep underground, in locations that perfectly match the descriptions in the texts. The librarian's chronicles provide the story, and the silent earth offers its testimony. The search for a physical entrance, for one undeniable stone step that leads into the dark, continues to drive explorers and archaeologists to this day, forever listening for the echo of a king's footfall in places the world has long forgotten. The labyrinth's architects ensured the king never truly walked in darkness, but in a carefully orchestrated dance with the cosmos itself. These were the celestial alignment chambers, a sixth principle of design that bound the subterranean fortress to the heavens. Far from being a sealed tomb, the maze was punctured by slender, perfectly vertical shafts, cleverly presented to the world above as simple ventilation for the tournament grounds beneath the spectator stands. But their true function was far more profound. Each shaft was a precision instrument, engineered to capture a single, brilliant needle of sunlight or moonlight at an exact moment of the day or year. This beam would fall upon a predetermined spot, a golden sunburst inlaid in the floor or a single, flawless emerald set into the wall, causing it to ignite with a sudden, breathtaking gleam. These illuminated markers were more than just waypoints. They were verification points, cosmic confirmations that the king was exactly where he was supposed to be. His mental blueprint, the Song of Stone, was deeply interwoven with the solar and lunar calendars. A poetic line like, "On the longest day, the lion's heart is pierced by light," was not a flight of fancy. It was a literal, scheduled instruction. It meant that at solar noon on the summer solstice, the king needed to be standing in the chamber of the guardian lion, where a shaft of light would strike a golden heart emblem on the beast stone chest. If the light did not appear, he would know he had misinterpreted the verses and was dangerously off course. This system transformed navigation from mere memory into a sacred ritual. It aligned the monarch's secret movements with the implacable rhythm of the universe, granting his passage a sense of divine sanction. The labyrinth was not just a hidden stronghold, it was a temple to royal power, where the sun and moon themselves became willing accomplices in protecting the kingdom's greatest secret. This final test of memory was also a profound test of character. The heir's ordeal, the secret rite of passage, was the moment a prince truly became a king in waiting. It was a ritual of isolation, held far from the pomp of the court, deep within the stone maze that held the kingdom's soul. On the appointed day, the reigning monarch would lead his successor through the hidden door, leaving the world of light and sound entirely behind. For the next 24 hours, there were no advisors, no guards, no comforting symbols of royalty. There was only a father, a son, the chilling silence, and the Song of Stone. The king would begin the recitation, his voice the only anchor in the disorienting dark. Each stanza of the epic poem was a piece of the path, and the prince's task was to interpret the allegory on the spot, translating poetic imagery into immediate physical action. A verse about a sleeping dragon might mean they needed to pass through a chamber where the air was heavy with natural gases. A line about a bridge of whispers could be the instruction to navigate a whispering gallery to receive a final clue. The prince had to lead, making every critical turn, identifying every hidden pressure plate, all while the weight of his future crown pressed down upon him. One misstep, one moment of hesitation or panic, and they could trigger a trap or become hopelessly lost. This was not a test one could simply study for. It demanded an agile mind, unshakable nerve, and a deep, intuitive trust in the king's teachings. The labyrinth did not care about birthright. It responded only to perfect recall and calm precision. To fail here was to prove oneself unready for the immense, lonely burden of power, a verdict more final than any courtly disapproval. But to succeed was to be transformed. Emerging back into the daylight, the prince carried with him more than a memorized map. He now held the intimate, chilling knowledge of what it truly meant to be king. The understanding that his ultimate strength lay not in visible armies, but in a secret woven into the very earth, a secret that he alone now was prepared to guard. But the stone could not contain every secret. In taverns and market squares, the common folk sang of a king who walked through walls and a knight who followed a phantom stag into the earth. These tales did not spring from nowhere. They were the careful work of minstrels and traveling players, artists who traded in the currency of wonder. Their ballads were masterpieces of double meaning, veiling the labyrinth's existence in layers of allegory and myth. A song about a silver path through a dreaming forest might secretly refer to a specific route marked by moonlight shafts. A play about a hero receiving a crown from a subterranean spirit could be a poetic retelling of the heir's rite of passage. The royal court, far from silencing these performers, often quietly encouraged them. A well-placed coin, a nod from a royal steward, could ensure a particular song spread from town to town. This was not an accident. It was a deliberate strategy of soft power. By allowing a sanitized, mythical version of the secret to circulate, the monarchy wrapped itself in an aura of the supernatural. The king was no longer just a man. He was a figure of legend who commanded mysteries beyond mortal understanding. This made his authority feel less like a political reality and more like a natural force, as inevitable as the turning of the seasons. The labyrinth thus existed in two parallel realms. One was the physical maze of stone and trap, known only to a single mind. The other was a living story, a shared myth sung to children and whispered around fires. Both were equally real, and both were absolutely essential, for one protected the king's body, while the other fortified his throne in the imagination of his people. The most disorienting room in the labyrinth offered no physical threat at all. Deep within the stone heart of the maze lay the chamber of mirrored truth, a perfectly circular room lined not with rough rock, but with panels of highly polished bronze. These metal plates were not perfectly flat. They were subtly warped, creating a hall of reflections where your own image stretched, compressed, and multiplied into infinity from every conceivable angle. In the exact center of the room, a single, still pool of black water collected in a depression in the floor, its surface a perfect dark mirror. Stepping inside was a profoundly unsettling experience. You were not just looking at your reflection, you were surrounded by a crowd of distorted versions of yourself, all moving in unison, all watching you. Historically, this was the room a king would seek in solitude before declaring a war, signing a pivotal treaty, or facing any decision that would shape the destiny of his kingdom. The disorienting effect of the warped mirrors was deliberate. It was designed to dismantle the royal facade, to strip away the ego and ceremony that insulated a ruler from his own humanity. Trapped within that circle of endlessly repeating selves, a king could no longer hide behind his crown. He was forced to confront the man underneath, to see his own doubts, his ambitions, and his fears reflected back at him 1,000 times over. The still pool at the center offered the only point of clarity, a place to kneel and see one true, undistorted image, a moment of stark honesty before the weight of a kingdom had to be shouldered once more. This chamber reveals that the labyrinth's ultimate purpose was not merely to protect a king from his enemies, but to protect the kingdom from a flawed king. It served as a brutal tool for self-governance, a silent counselor that reminded the ruler that the most complex and dangerous maze he would ever have to navigate was the labyrinth of his own soul. The ultimate price of the labyrinth's perfection was paid not by a king, but by the genius who designed it. While monarchs wielded the Song of Stone, the architect who conceived its maddening geometry was erased from history with chilling finality. Upon the final stone being laid, royal scribes meticulously purged every scroll, every ledger, and every payroll record that bore his name or detailed his involvement. He became a non-person, a ghost in his own lifetime. Official court histories would later claim the king himself had drawn the plans through divine inspiration, a convenient lie that further elevated the crown's mystique. The most persistent legend, whispered in the kitchens and stables of the castle, tells a darker tale. It says the architect was rewarded with a grand title and a secluded estate, a gilded cage from which he never again emerged into public life. Other, more haunting versions suggest his reward was far more intimate. They claim he was led on a final walk through his magnificent creation, only to have a passage seal shut behind him, becoming the labyrinth's first and most knowledgeable permanent resident. This practice of entombing the builder was a grotesque but logical extension of royal security. the ultimate guarantee that a mind which held the entire blueprint could never be compelled to share it. His spectral presence, a figure of profound knowledge forever pacing the halls he designed, serves as a sobering reminder of the human cost behind such absolute power. In the medieval world, a single brilliant mind was an asset far too dangerous to leave alive and free, a solitary soul sacrificed to ensure a kingdom's secret would die with him. Its resilience was tested to the absolute limit during the grueling siege of 1307. For an entire year, enemy forces encircled the city, confident that starvation and despair would soon deliver the crown into their hands. They watched the castle walls, expecting to see the flags of surrender, but they were looking in the wrong direction. The true source of the kingdom's endurance lay hidden beneath their very feet, in the cool, dark chambers of the labyrinth. While the citizens and soldiers above rationed their last grains, the king and his most essential courtiers withdrew into the stone. They found not a tomb, but a thriving strategic reserve. Vast hidden storerooms held mountains of dried meats, hard cheeses, and sealed barrels of grain, all meticulously maintained by the silent guardian. The labyrinth's brilliant hydraulic system, the same one that powered its time-lock traps, provided a continuous, secret flow of fresh, clean water, filling deep cisterns that never ran dry. In one secure armory, racks held not just spare swords and shields, but bundles of arrows and crossbow bolts, resources that were becoming desperately scarce on the surface. But the labyrinth offered more than just supplies. It offered a decisive tactical advantage. The king did not rule from a sealed bunker. Using the network of whispering galleries, his commands traveled instantly to his commanders at the walls, coordinating the defense with an eerie, impossible precision that baffled the enemy. More importantly, secret tunnels, known only from the Song of Stone, allowed for the impossible. Small, elite squads of knights could slip out from hidden exits behind the enemy's own siege lines, launch devastating, surprise attacks on their supply trains, and then vanish back into the earth before a proper counterattack could be organized. To the besieging army, it seemed as if the castle itself was producing soldiers and supplies from nothing. Their confusion festered into a deep, gnawing demoralization. How could a city that should have fallen months ago still be launching such effective counterstrikes? The labyrinth had transformed the very nature of the siege. It was no longer a test of who had the stronger walls, but a battle of endurance between a visible army and an invisible, unbreakable will. This year-long ordeal forever changed the labyrinth's role. It was no longer just the king's secret escape route or a tool for intimidation. It had become the undeniable, beating heart of the kingdom, the hidden organ that kept the entire body alive against impossible odds. Yet within this fortress of psychological warfare, a single chamber offered a profound and unexpected reprieve. Deep in the labyrinth's heart lay the Garden of Stone and Shadow, a vast cavern where the architects demonstrated their most humane insight. A cleverly disguised shaft high above allowed a single beam of daylight to filter down, diffusing into a soft, perpetual twilight that nourished a hidden ecosystem. Velvet mosses carpeted the floor, and delicate ferns unfurled against the damp stone walls. Patches of bioluminescent fungi glowed with a gentle, blue-green light, creating a starry canopy on the cavern ceiling. The only sound was the tranquil trickle of a natural spring feeding a small, crystal-clear pool. Warmth radiated from a geothermal vent, keeping the air fresh and temperate, a stark contrast to the chill of the surrounding corridors. This was not a space for strategy or survival, but for solitude. Here, the king could retreat from the crushing weight of the crown, away from the endless petitions and the watchful eyes of the court. He could sit by the quiet water, surrounded not by threats, but by a serene, subterranean forest. The garden served as a silent acknowledgement that a ruler's mind was the kingdom's ultimate resource, and that its endurance required moments of true peace. It proved the labyrinth was more than a trap or a treasury. It was a complete world, designed to sustain a monarch's spirit as surely as it protected his body. But what if the Song of Stone was not the only key? A compelling alternative theory challenges the idea that the labyrinth's entire design was entrusted to memory alone. Some historians propose the existence of a physical object, a legendary Codex of Whispers. This was not a conventional book bound in leather, but a master copy, a failsafe written in a special sympathetic ink. To the naked eye, its pages would appear blank, a collection of pristine vellum holding its secrets in perfect silence. The magic, they argue, happened only within a single, specific chamber deep inside the labyrinth itself. This room contained a geothermal vent, a natural source of steady, radiant heat. When the codex was placed near this warmth, the invisible ink would slowly darken, revealing its hidden knowledge. Elaborate star charts would materialize, mapping the celestial alignment shafts. Precise architectural diagrams would unfold, showing the mechanical schematics for the shifting walls. And alongside these images, lines of coded text would appear, directly corresponding to the allegorical verses of the Song of Stone. This theory elegantly resolves the immense practical difficulty of a king perfectly memorizing such a vast and complex structure across his entire reign. It suggests a brilliant dual-layer security system. The mental map, the Song of Stone, was for immediate, regular use, allowing the king to navigate the maze from memory during a crisis or for his private rituals. The physical codex, however, served as the ultimate backup, a verifiable reference to be consulted only in the most extreme emergencies, perhaps if the king fell ill or if his heir needed verification before the final rite of passage. This codex would have been kept in a separate, equally secret location, guarded by a different branch of the royal household, ensuring that no single point of failure could compromise the entire secret. The very idea of the Codex of Whispers adds a profound new layer of intrigue to the legend, transforming the labyrinth from a singular mental puzzle into a system with a tangible, though equally elusive, heart. The hum of a ground-penetrating radar unit has replaced the whispered Song of Stone. Modern archaeologists, armed with clues from monastic chronicles and royal ledgers, now scan the earth beneath historic European tournament sites, searching for the ghost of the labyrinth. Their instruments have painted a startling picture deep underground, revealing large structured voids and the clear geometry of tunnels that defy all known records. These are not ancient sewers or forgotten crypts. The scale and complexity of these anomalies point to something far more deliberate, a hidden architecture that matches the descriptions of the king's secret world. Yet the very success of the labyrinth's original disguise now protects it. The tournament grounds of old are often buried deep beneath the foundations of modern cities, covered by centuries of urban growth. A promising radar signal might point directly under a bustling town square or a historic building that cannot be disturbed. The search becomes a delicate dance, a race between historical discovery and the relentless pace of urban development. To find a physical entrance would require not just sophisticated technology, but also a tremendous amount of luck, a chance alignment of a radar scan, a willing property owner, and the precise interpretation of a poetic clue from a 700-year-old text. The potential reward, however, is almost beyond measure. To find that single grass-topped stone dais, that hidden pivot point, and to open a door that has been sealed for centuries, would be to step out of legend and into tangible history. It would be one of the most significant archaeological finds of our time, offering a direct physical connection to the brilliant, paranoid minds who built a kingdom's deepest secret and then vanished into the silence they created. The final door to the Hall of the Ancestors rejected all physical keys. Its surface was a seamless sheet of polished, resonant obsidian set into the living rock. At its center was a single, funnel-like opening, a stone mouthpiece carved to resemble a lion's maw. This was an acoustic lock, a mechanism of breathtaking complexity that responded not to metal but to music. Deep within the door, a series of perfectly tuned crystal strings of varying lengths and thicknesses were connected to delicate counterweights. The correct sequence of musical notes, sung with the proper pitch and rhythm, would set these specific strings vibrating in a precise harmonic pattern. This vibration would trigger the counterweights to shift in a predetermined order, releasing a series of internal stone bolts and allowing the massive door to swing inward without a sound. Any deviation from the true melody, a single note sung flat or a fraction of a beat too slow, would fail to engage the mechanism, leaving the door as immovable as the mountain itself. This final, unpickable lock was the culmination of the labyrinth's entire defensive philosophy, proving that the most powerful secrets are not just known but performed. The key to this lock was the final, most sacred stanza of the Song of Stone, a melody known only as the Monarch's Refrain. This was not a part of the blueprint shared during the heir's rite of passage. It was a separate, final piece of the puzzle, taught by the dying king to his successor in the last private moments of his life. The tune was deceptively simple, a haunting, ancient air that was said to echo the very first king's coronation hymn. Yet its power lay in its subtle nuances, the specific timbre and tonal quality that had been passed down through the royal bloodline for generations. It was believed that the lock responded not just to the notes themselves, but to the unique vocal resonance of the anointed ruler, a biological signature woven into the song. A commoner or even a bastard child who had somehow learned the melody would find their voice rejected by the silent stone. This ensured that access to the kingdom's soul was not merely a matter of stolen knowledge, but a test of legitimate lineage and divine right. Beyond that resonant door lay the ultimate purpose of the entire subterranean world, the Hall of the Ancestors. This was not a tomb of grim silence, but a sacred space that served as the kingdom's spiritual and political core. In niches carved into the circular walls rested the sarcophagi of every past monarch, their resting places marked not by name, but by their personal heraldic symbol, glowing with a soft, embedded phosphorescence. At the chamber's center, on a simple stone dais, rested the kingdom's most vital treasures. Here was the original crown, a simple circlet of iron and unpolished gemstones from the time of the first king, its symbolic power far exceeding any jewel-encrusted replica used in public ceremonies. Beside it lay the royal scepter and, most importantly, the sealed original copies of every foundational treaty and alliance that bound the kingdom together. These were not mere artifacts, they were the physical embodiment of the nation's identity, its history, and its promises. In a time of crisis, a usurper could seize the castle and the throne room, but only the true heir, singing the correct song, could ever lay claim to the original sources of royal authority. The labyrinth, therefore, was not just a hiding place, it was the ultimate arbiter of legitimacy, a silent judge that held the kingdom's soul safe until the rightful ruler came to reclaim it. The genius of the labyrinth did not remain buried. Its principles of hidden defense and psychological dominance seeped out of the tournament grounds and into the very bones of later castles and Renaissance palaces. Architects of the 15th and 16th centuries, while building grander and more elegant structures, quietly adopted the labyrinth's core philosophy. They understood that a fortress was only as strong as its most secret chamber. This gave rise to the concept of the keep within a keep, a heavily fortified and deeply concealed inner sanctum where a ruler could retreat if the outer walls were breached. It was a direct architectural descendant of the hidden world beneath the tournament field. In the grand ducal palaces of Italy, for instance, you find studies with bookshelves that pivot to reveal escape routes, and bedrooms with floorboards that open onto spiral staircases leading to secure underground tunnels. These were not just whimsical additions, they were calculated security measures inspired by the labyrinth's shifting masonry. The disguised door became a standard feature in the homes of the powerful, hidden behind tapestries or integrated into ornate wood paneling, its mechanism known only to the family and their most trusted retainers. Even the labyrinth's sophisticated use of sound found new life. The whispering galleries evolved into simpler but effective systems of acoustic tubes and speaking pipes built into the walls, allowing a lord in his private chamber to communicate instantly with his guards in the gatehouse without ever showing his face. This created an illusion of omnipresence, a psychological advantage straight from the labyrinth's playbook. The legacy of this medieval marvel is therefore woven into centuries of architectural history. It established a timeless truth for those in power, that the most potent form of security is not a towering wall that dares an enemy to attack, but a hidden door that an enemy never even knows exists. The labyrinth under the tournament grounds was the ultimate expression of medieval rule, a perfect fusion of public spectacle and private power. Our journey through its hidden corridors has revealed a world built not just of stone, but of paranoia, genius, and profound psychological insight. We have seen how its impossible geometry and weaponized silence were designed to break the will of any intruder. We have followed its role in saving a kingdom during a brutal siege, and witnessed how it served as a silent stage for the most critical negotiations. It was far more than a simple maze. It was a multifaceted instrument of governance, a sanctuary, and a chillingly effective tool of control. The human stories woven into its fabric are its most lasting legacy. The mute devotion of the silent guardian, the terrifying rite of passage endured by the royal heir, and the tragic, anonymous architect erased from his own creation, all speak to the immense personal cost of guarding such a profound secret. While the physical stones may still lie hidden beneath the earth, the labyrinth's true blueprint endures in the stories we tell. It challenges us to peer beneath the polished surface of history, to question the grand narratives, and to listen for the whispers of the hidden architectures that have always shaped the world from the shadows. What other incredible secrets are waiting just beneath our feet, their stories yet to be uncovered? Let us know which hidden histories you would like to explore next in the comments, and subscribe to join us as we continue unraveling the mysteries of the past.